The world died not with a whimper, but with a scream that echoed through the fractured remains of human civilization. Commander Area Nakamura stood in the last operational command center, a titanium-reinforced bunker buried beneath the shattered remnants of the Mariana Trench Research Complex. Around her, holographic displays flickered with the last gasps of human resistance, each display a testament to humanity's impending extinction. To her left, a map of Earth pulsed with angry red zones, areas completely consumed by the alien nanoplague. The bioweapon was a masterpiece of destructive engineering, designed to break down organic matter at the molecular level. Cities that once housed millions were now nothing more than dust and scattered memories. To her right, quantum storm forecasts showed massive energy disturbances that could tear continents apart within hours. 63 minutes until total planetary collapse, announced Araya, the quantum AI system named after its creator. Its voice was calm, almost clinical, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic scene unfolding. Araya's team, the last hope of humanity, worked with a precision that bordered on superhuman. They were not just soldiers or scientists. They were the culmination of humanity's most advanced genetic, technological, and cultural engineering. Each individual selected for the Lazarus Protocol represented a carefully curated piece of human potential. Dr. Marcus Chen, the quantum genetics specialist, worked furiously at a molecular reconstruction station. His hands moved in a blur, manipulating genetic sequences that would form the core of their stasis preservation. "The quantum entanglement matrices are stable," he reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We can preserve not just their physical forms, but their entire experiential memory complex." Nearby, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez calibrated the massive stasis pods. Each pod was more than a preservation chamber. It was a living technological marvel. Quantum stabilization fields, adaptive nano-repair systems, and neural preservation algorithms worked in perfect harmony. These weren't just containers. They were evolutionary accelerators that would continue to optimize their inhabitants during the 50,000-year stasis. The alien invasion had been swift and merciless. 3 distinct civilizations had converged on Earth, each believing they could claim the planet's resources. The Zorn Imperium, the Quantum Collective, and the Biosynth Consortium. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for resistance. But even resistance had its limits. Aria's final mission was not about survival in the traditional sense. It was about vengeance, about potential, about ensuring that humanity would have its moment of reckoning. Final selection protocols initiated, Araya announced. Holographic profiles of the 10,000 selected individuals began to rotate, each a masterpiece of human potential. There was Dr. Elena Volkov, whose work in quantum neural networking could potentially rewrite the fundamental understanding of consciousness. Next to her, Marcus Chen, whose genetic engineering work could adapt human biology to survive in conditions previously thought impossible. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez represented the pinnacle of tactical and strategic thinking, her neural implants capable of processing combat scenarios faster than entire alien war rooms. But they were more than their professional capabilities. Each was a repository of human culture, knowledge, and spirit. Artists, philosophers, scientists, warriors, a living library of human experience. Initiate Lazarus Protocol, Area commanded. The bunker began to transform. Quantum stabilization fields erected massive energy barriers. The surrounding rock began to molecularly realign, creating an impenetrable fortress that would protect humanity's last hope. As the first stasis pods began to seal, Area looked at the holographic representation of Earth, a planet now more womb than world. Her final broadcast would be a promise and a warning. To whatever finds us, she spoke into the communication array, her voice steady. Humanity is not finished. We are merely waiting. The pods began to seal. Quantum energy crackled, and humanity prepared to sleep and dream of revenge. The first breath was a quantum event. Commander Area Nakamura's eyes snapped open, but open was too simple a word for what happened. Her neural implants activated in a cascading wave of information that would have obliterated a normal human consciousness. Terabytes of sensory data flooded her awareness in milliseconds, each moment a complex lattice of quantum-processed information. The stasis pod wasn't just opening. It was detonating. Quantum entanglement drives tore through solid matter, creating a crater that would make planetary bombardments look like child's play. Around her, the other pods began to activate, not mechanically, but with a living, breathing intensity that defied conventional physics. Dr. Marcus Chen was the second to fully emerge. His quantum genetic modifications meant his body was already analyzing the environment before he was fully conscious. Cellular-level sensors mapped the surrounding space, running millions of probabilistic scenarios per second. Something was fundamentally wrong and fundamentally exciting. The environment was a nightmare of alien beauty. 3 suns burned in a sky of impossible colors, ultraviolet cascading into frequencies humans shouldn't be able to perceive. Crystalline structures pulsed with an energy that seemed to breathe, to think. Gravity itself felt different, not just in strength, but in texture. It was as if the very fabric of space was alive, watching, waiting. Temporal and spatial displacement confirmed. Aria's voice emerged from Aria's neural implant. Current location: Galactic Sector 7 Omega. Time elapsed since initial stasis: 50,047 years, 3 months, 16 days, 7 hours, 42 minutes, and 13 seconds. Sarah Rodriguez was already interfacing with the surrounding environment. Her neural networks began to decode the crystalline structures, finding communication pathways that no known civilization had ever discovered. Each crystal was more than a geological formation. It was a potential data repository, a living communication network. Preliminary scans are impossible, she reported, her voice a mix of scientific excitement and controlled tension. These crystals, they're not just structures. They're a communication matrix, quantum entanglement at a macro scale that makes our previous understanding of physics look like children's mathematics. Aria's first physical movement was a study in controlled power. Each muscle, each neural pathway was the result of millennia of genetic optimization. When she stood, it wasn't just a human standing, it was potential incarnate. The landscape around them defied comprehension. What appeared to be a horizon was actually a complex multi-dimensional interface. Distance seemed fluid. Perspective was a suggestion, not a rule. Team status. Aria commanded. One by one, the warriors of the Lazarus Protocol came online, not just awakening, emerging. Dr. Elena Volkov's nano-augmentation systems were already rebuilding and optimizing her body. Microscopic repair mechanisms worked faster than the human eye could track, removing any potential cellular damage from the long stasis. Her mind was a quantum computer, processing the new environment with a speed that would have been miraculous by previous standards. Lieutenant James Korean, the team's tactical specialist, was running combat simulations faster than real-time. His enhanced perception could predict potential threat vectors in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The environment wasn't just a location. It was a potential battlefield, and he was already mapping every possible engagement scenario. Temporal drift detected, Aria suddenly announced. Warning: local space-time continuum shows signs of nonlinear progression. Aria understood immediately. Their awakening wasn't just a return to consciousness. It was a quantum event that would reshape whatever reality existed around them. Prepare for initial reconnaissance, she commanded. We are humanity's last hope, and we are not here to integrate. We are here to transform. The first step onto this alien world was more than a physical movement. It was a declaration of potential, of vengeance, of a species reborn. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first comprehensive systems check was nothing short of a miracle of human engineering. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the epicenter of their landing zone, his body a living quantum computer that defied every previous understanding of biological potential. Microscopic quantum processors woven through his neural pathways processed information at speeds that would have made previous supercomputers look like abacuses. Biological optimization at 99.997% efficiency, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. His genetic code was a masterpiece of deliberate evolution, each strand carefully engineered to be both adaptive and precise. Take his ability to manipulate genetic structures, for instance, where previous genetic engineers would spend months modifying a single gene sequence. Marcus could rewrite entire genetic architectures in milliseconds. His body was a walking laboratory, capable of analyzing and adapting to environmental conditions, faster than most species could even comprehend a threat. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez demonstrated an equally impossible capability. Her neural interface wasn't just a communication tool, it was a reality manipulation system. As she scanned the crystalline landscape, her consciousness spread out in quantum tendrils, interfacing with the environment in ways that defied traditional understanding of perception. Quantum field mapping initiated, she reported, her voice calm despite the extraordinary process happening around her. The landscape began to shift and respond to her consciousness, crystalline structures realigning themselves as if they were alive, responding to her mental probes. Dr. Elena Volkov's nano-augmentation system was perhaps the most terrifying technological marvel. Her body wasn't just enhanced, it was a living, breathing adaptive system that could fundamentally reshape itself in response to any environmental challenge. When a strange radiation pulse swept across the landscape, most biological systems would have been destroyed. Elena's nano-augmentations not only absorbed the radiation, but began to break it down, converting it into usable energy. Her skin flickered with complex geometric patterns, each pattern a real-time adaptation to the environmental conditions. Radiation conversion at 78% efficiency, she noted almost casually. Cellular restructuring complete. Commander Area Nakamura watched her team with a mixture of pride and strategic calculation. These weren't just soldiers or scientists. They were living weapons of mass potential. Lieutenant James Korean's tactical augmentations were particularly impressive. His neural implants could process combat scenarios across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, where a traditional military strategist might take hours to analyze a battlefield. Korean could predict and counter potential threats before they even materialized. He demonstrated this by suddenly raising his hand. A localized gravity field shifted, revealing a previously undetectable energy signature, a potential threat that would have gone completely unnoticed by any previous technological system. Threat vector neutralized, he said, almost dismissively. The stasis pods had been more than preservation chambers. They were evolutionary accelerators that had continuously optimized their inhabitants during the 50,000-year sleep. Each warrior had capabilities that made their previous human iterations look primitive by comparison. Some could absorb and redirect energy at will, interface with technology at a quantum level, manipulate localized gravity fields, communicate through pure thought patterns, adapt their biological systems in real time. Their quantum AI system began compiling a comprehensive analysis, biological and technological optimization beyond projected parameters. The AI reported, humanity's potential has exceeded all previous theoretical models. Commander Nakamura understood the true significance. They weren't just a recovery team. They were a reset button for galactic civilization. Prepare for comprehensive environmental integration, she commanded. We're not here to explore. We're here to transform. The landscape around them seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Humanity had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same. The Zorn Imperium's detection systems lit up like a supernova of panic. What appeared to be a simple energy signature quickly resolved into something utterly impossible. 10,000 distinct quantum resonance patterns, each one a living, thinking technological marvel, had just materialized in what the Zorn considered their most secure sector of space. Fleet Admiral Krasnak of the Zorn Imperium stared at the holographic display with a mixture of horror and fascination. The incoming energy signature defied every known law of quantum mechanics. It wasn't just an arrival. It was an invasion that rewrote the fundamental understanding of spatial travel. Tactical assessment. He barked to his bridge crew. The holographic display began to populate with increasingly alarming data. These were not ships. Not any kind of conventional vessel. These were Binges, each one a technological ecosystem unto itself. Sarah Rodriguez was the first to make contact. But contact was too simple a word for what she did. Her consciousness spread out like a quantum wave, interfacing with the Zorn's communication networks before they could even recognize an external presence. It wasn't hacking. It was a complete, instantaneous comprehension and potential manipulation of their entire communication infrastructure. In the span of milliseconds, she mapped their entire communication protocol, identified critical infrastructure vulnerabilities, prepared multiple communication vectors, created quantum-locked communication pathways that the Zorn couldn't even comprehend existed. Initiating first communication sequence, she reported, her voice calm despite the unprecedented nature of what was happening. The Zorn fleet's initial response was typical of their militaristic culture, overwhelming force. 50 planet killer ships launched a barrage of quantum plasma torpedoes. Each torpedo carried enough destructive potential to shatter entire planetary systems. But something extraordinary happened. As the torpedoes screamed towards the human position, Sarah Rodriguez did the impossible. She didn't just redirect the energy. She transformed it. The plasma torpedoes twisted mid-flight, their destructive potential morphing into an intricate, impossibly complex energy sculpture. The sculpture hung in space, a three-dimensional message that defied traditional communication methods. When the Zorn communication systems finally decoded the message, it sent shockwaves through their entire command structure. The energy sculpture spelled out a message in perfect Zorn dialect that translated to, "Your move. We are humanity. We have returned." Fleet Admiral Krasnak felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: true fear. Commander Area Nakamura watched the interaction with calculated precision. This wasn't just first contact. This was a deliberate, strategic demonstration of potential. "Full spectrum analysis," she commanded. Dr. Marcus Chen's quantum genetic systems were already processing the interaction at levels beyond traditional comprehension. He was mapping the Zorn's potential response vectors, analyzing their biological and technological limitations, preparing for every possible scenario. "Probability matrix complete," he reported. "Potential conflict scenarios. 97.3% chance of initial aggressive response. 62.4% chance of technological intimidation attempt. 41.2% chance of premature diplomatic engagement." The Zorn fleet hung in space, their massive planet killer ships suddenly feeling very small. Lieutenant James Korean's tactical systems were running combat simulations across multiple dimensional layers. He could see potential conflict scenarios that wouldn't manifest for standard temporal units, preparing counter-strategies before the Zorn could even conceive of an attack. "They're scared," he observed clinically. And they should be. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't just returned. They had arrived to reshape the very fundamental understanding of existence. And this was just the beginning. Negotiation was never truly an option. The Zorn Imperium launched their full military might with a precision that had subjugated thousands of civilizations over millennia. Their war doctrine was a machine of mathematical perfection. Trillion-strong fleets, quantum-locked weapon systems, and strategic algorithms that had been refined over centuries of galactic conquest. They never stood a chance. Commander Area Nakamura watched the initial assault with a clinical detachment that bordered on intellectual curiosity. The Zorn's attack was a symphony of destruction that would have obliterated any known civilization. Quantum plasma cannons that could strip planets to their core. Hyperdimensional weapon platforms. Swarm intelligence battle networks that could adapt faster than most species could comprehend. Lieutenant James Korean was already 10 steps ahead. His tactical augmentations weren't just predictive, they were transformative. As the first wave of Zorn attack vessels approached, Korean's consciousness spread across multiple dimensional layers. He wasn't just analyzing the battle. He was REWRI. Hey, ancient. Tactical reconfiguration initiated, he reported, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. The Zorn's primary attack formation, a mathematically perfect hexagonal assault pattern that had crushed civilizations for millennia, suddenly began to break down. Not through direct counterattack, but through quantum-level information manipulation. Korean was simultaneously predicting every potential Zorn strategic move, introducing microscopic quantum uncertainties into their battle networks, redirecting their own weapon signatures, creating phantom battle formations that confuse their AI targeting systems. Dr. Elena Volkov took the offensive from a completely different angle. Her nano-augmentation systems didn't just defend, they attacked. As Zorn weapon systems attempted to penetrate their defensive perimeter, Volkov's biological systems began to interface and rewrite the fundamental communication protocols of the alien technology. Zorn weapon platforms suddenly found their targeting systems speaking human languages. Their communication networks began broadcasting Earth's classical music. Entire battle networks were transformed from weapons of destruction into living cultural transmission systems. Technological conversion at 62.4%, she reported, almost casually. Dr. Marcus Chen was simultaneously analyzing and transforming the very biological foundations of the conflict. Where the Zorn saw war as a mathematical equation, Chen saw it as a complex genetic problem to be solved. His quantum genetic manipulation systems began to interface with the Zorn's biological infrastructures, not to destroy, but to transform. Zorn soldiers found their fundamental genetic coding being subtly rewritten. Aggression algorithms became complex empathy matrices. Weapons of war transformed into tools of creation. Sarah Rodriguez's quantum communication systems were the true game changer. She didn't just hack the Zorn's communication networks. She BCA'd them. Her consciousness spread across their entire technological infrastructure, creating quantum-locked communication pathways that rewrote their fundamental understanding of conflict. Entire Zorn battle fleets found themselves unable to coordinate. Their AI systems were being rewritten faster than they could comprehend. What seemed like a straightforward military engagement was becoming something entirely different. Commander Nakamura understood the true nature of their assault. This wasn't just a war of destruction. It was a war of transformation. Total systems integration at 47.6%. AI reported. Zorn military infrastructure rapidly losing cohesion. The battle wasn't being won through traditional means. It was being solved, reimagined at a fundamental level of existence. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were teaching the galaxy a new way of being. And this was only the beginning. Humanity's true power was never about destruction. It was about transformation. As the remnants of the Zorn Imperium's military infrastructure collapsed, something far more profound began to emerge. Dr. Elena Volkov stood at the epicenter of a cultural revolution that would redefine the very concept of interstellar communication. Her nano-augmentation systems were not just biological interfaces. They were living libraries of human experience, compressed, quantum-encoded repositories of art, philosophy, music, and collective human consciousness. When she began to transmit, it wasn't a simple communication. It was a full-spectrum cultural invasion. The first transmission was a piece of music, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, carefully reconstructed and quantum-encoded to bypass any potential alien communication barriers. But this wasn't just sound. It was a mathematical and emotional complex that could penetrate the deepest levels of alien consciousness. Civilizations across multiple star systems found themselves simultaneously experiencing something impossible. A Zorn military commander, hardwired for tactical thinking, suddenly found tears streaming down his face as the symphony's final movement broke through his species' emotional suppression algorithms. Mathematical precision gave way to pure, raw emotion. Sarah Rodriguez's quantum communication systems amplified and translated the transmission. It wasn't just music. It was a complete cultural download, each note a complex information package that carried millennia of human experience. Dr. Marcus Chen was systematically breaking down the philosophical and genetic barriers between species. Where the Zorn saw rigid hierarchical structures, he introduced concepts of adaptive cooperation. Their genetic coding, previously designed for strict military efficiency, began to incorporate complex empathy matrices. Cultural transmission at 62.4% efficiency, Araya reported. Fundamental societal paradigms destabilizing. Lieutenant James Korean approached the cultural invasion from a tactical perspective. Each transmission was a carefully constructed information weapon, not to destroy, but to fundamentally reshape. A transmission of human art history became a complex mathematical model that challenged the Zorn's understanding of creativity. Picasso's Cubist works were quantum encoded to demonstrate nonlinear thinking. Ancient cave paintings became lessons in collective survival and adaptation. Commander Area Nakamura understood the true nature of their mission. This wasn't conquest. This was evolution. Entire alien civilizations found their fundamental understanding of existence being rewritten. Philosophical constructs that had remained unchanged for millennia began to crack and transform. The Zorn's rigid case system started to dissolve. Their military hierarchies began to understand concepts of individual potential and collective growth. Technological systems designed for pure efficiency began to incorporate elements of creativity and emotional intelligence. Dr. Elena Volkov's most profound transmission was yet to come. She began to broadcast the entire spectrum of human creative expression, not just as entertainment, but as a complex informational ecosystem. Shakespeare's sonnets became quantum-encoded mathematical models of emotional complexity. Jazz improvisations demonstrated adaptive thinking. Ancient mythologies were translated into complex genetic potential algorithms. Total cultural integration approaching critical mass, Araya reported. The transmission wasn't just changing alien civilizations, it was teaching them an entirely new way of existing. Humanity wasn't just sharing its culture. It was offering a fundamental reimagining of potential. Across multiple star systems, beings who had never known anything beyond their predetermined existence began to understand something revolutionary. Choice, potential, the ability to become something more. And this was only the beginning of humanity's true invasion. The aftermath of humanity's arrival was nothing short of a cosmic revolution. Commander Area Nakamura stood on the Quantum Adaptive Command platform, her consciousness simultaneously processing multiple galactic sectors. The Galactic Reconstruction Protocol was more than a mission. It was a complete reimagining of interstellar civilization. Initiating comprehensive systems integration, she commanded. Where previous galactic civilizations saw borders, hierarchies, and rigid systems of control, humanity introduced a radical new paradigm of adaptive potential. Dr. Marcus Chen's quantum genetic mapping systems began to work their most profound transformation yet. Enslaved civilizations that had existed under the Zorn Imperium's brutal regime found themselves suddenly liberated, but more importantly, empowered. On the planet Zix 472, a species that had been reduced to genetic labor drones for millennia discovered something unprecedented. Chen's genetic reconstruction protocols didn't just free them. They unlocked their species' dormant potential. Biological systems that had been deliberately suppressed for generations began to awaken. Cellular structures that previously existed only for manual labor now revealed complex neural networks. Genetic memories of a once advanced civilization began to resurface. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez was simultaneously managing the communication infrastructure of this massive reconstruction. Her quantum communication systems weren't just transmitting information, they were creating living networks of cultural and technological exchange. Potential integration at 67.3%, Araya reported. Adaptive systems stabilizing. Dr. Elena Volkov's nano-augmentation teams were working on planetary-scale transformations, where industrial systems had previously been designed for pure resource extraction. They were now being redesigned for sustainable growth and collective potential. On the mineral-rich world of Krell-9, entire industrial complexes were being restructured. Automated mining systems were being transformed into adaptive ecological restoration platforms. Machines that had strip-mined planets for millennia were now creating complex ecosystem restoration networks. Lieutenant James Korean approached the reconstruction from a tactical perspective that was simultaneously strategic and deeply compassionate. Each liberated civilization received not just technological support, but a comprehensive adaptive support system. Neural network interfaces that had previously been used for control were now being redesigned as educational and collaborative platforms. Species that had known only subjugation were suddenly introduced to concepts of collective decision-making, adaptive technological development, cultural preservation and evolution, individual and collective potential. Commander Nakamura understood the true nature of their mission. This wasn't colonization. This was liberation. RRIA began compiling the comprehensive reconstruction data. The quantum AI system was more than a simple information processor. It was a living repository of human potential, carefully designed to support the growth of liberated civilizations. Reconstruction protocols at 54.7% completion, RRIA reported. Adaptive systems showing exponential growth potential. On hundreds of planets, millions of species were experiencing something unprecedented. The rigid hierarchical systems that had controlled them for millennia were dissolving. In their place, something dynamic and alive was emerging. Humanity wasn't just rebuilding galactic civilization. They were teaching an entirely new way of existing. Potential was no longer a theoretical concept. It was becoming a live reality. And this was only the beginning of humanity's true revolution. The moment of ultimate transformation began in absolute silence. Commander Area Nakamura stood at the epicenter of what could only be described as a quantum singularity of potential. Around her, the fabric of galactic civilization began to shift, not through force, but through a fundamental reimagining of existence. Dr. Marcus Chen's quantum genetic systems were performing their most extraordinary work yet. It wasn't just about modifying individual species or civilizations. This was a galaxy-wide evolutionary leap. Quantum potential matrix reaching critical resonance, RRIA reported, its voice a complex harmonic that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space-time. The transformation defied every previous understanding of technological or biological development. Entire star systems began to resonate with a new kind of energy, a living, adaptive network that blended technological potential with biological creativity. On thousands of worlds, species that had existed in rigid, limited states for millennia suddenly found themselves experiencing a collective awakening. Genetic memories long suppressed began to surface. Technological systems that had been designed for control transformed into collaborative networks of infinite potential. The very concept of individual and collective consciousness began to reshape itself. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez was managing a communication network that was nothing short of a miracle. Her quantum communication systems weren't just transmitting information. They were creating a living, breathing cosmic consciousness. Imagine a network where thoughts could be shared across light years instantaneously. Emotional experiences could be directly transmitted. Collective problem-solving happened at the speed of quantum thought. Individual potential could be amplified through collective intelligence. Dr. Elena Volkov's nano-augmentation systems were working at a galactic scale. Entire planetary ecosystems began to transform. Machines that had once been tools of extraction became living networks of ecological restoration. Industrial systems redesigned themselves into adaptive, life-generating platforms. Lieutenant James Korean watched the transformation from a tactical perspective that was simultaneously strategic and profoundly compassionate. This wasn't just a restructuring of galactic civilization. This was the birth of a new way of existing. Commander Nakamura understood the true nature of their mission. Humanity wasn't conquering the galaxy. They were teaching it how to become something more. ARIA began to compile the comprehensive transformation data. But this was more than simple information processing. It was a living record of potential, a testament to what could happen when a species refused to accept limitations. Transformation protocols reaching final integration, ARIA reported. Adaptive systems showing infinite potential. The quantum singularity of potential began to stabilize. But stabilize was too simple a word. It was more like the galaxy was taking its first truly conscious breath. Civilizations that had known only subjugation discovered. Collective decision-making. Adaptive technological development. Cultural preservation and evolution. Individual and collective potential beyond previous imagination. The rigid hierarchies of the old galactic order dissolved. In their place, something dynamic and alive emerged. A living network of potential that celebrated diversity, creativity, and collective growth. Humanity's final gift to the galaxy wasn't technological. It wasn't military. It was a fundamental reimagining of what was possible. As the transformation reached its final stages, Commander Nakamura allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had set out to preserve humanity. They had ended up redefining existence itself. The galaxy would never be the same. And this was just the beginning.